Good evening, everybody. It is currently about 2200 Philippine Standard Time. That's about 14 Zulu for those of you worldwide watching this on today, the 12th of October 2011. We continue to watch now Tropical Depression Banyan moving off towards the west away from the Philippines, or actually Tropical Depression Ramon here being called by Bagasa. Current winds out of it, about 30, gusting up to 40 knots. It has been downgraded to a Tropical Depression due to an increase in vertical wind shear here from the southwest, but also the land interaction as it moved across Visayas. But let's zoom in and take a closer look at this tropical depression here. As already noted though, those winds of 30 gusting up to 40 knots are not the major player here. It is the extensive amount of rainfall. Actually pull off the IR water vapor differential. You still see a lot of this convection here located over Visayas and also southern Luzon, and that area is actually already saturated due to the abundant amount of precipitation they have been seeing the last couple weeks out there with the last several typhoons. Well, this is adding up to even more so. Actually, over 200 millimeters of rainfall were recorded here on Samar, and actually over 150 millimeters along southern Luzon here in the past 24 hours as this tropical system has continued to move across the Philippines here. If we pull up the IR from NHC here, though, you do see a lot of those convection and higher cloud tops, a lot more apparent here, indicated in white, and that's where we're going to be seeing those heaviest amount of rainfall. But really, the system is not too organized, as already noted, though. As it moved across the Philippines, that land interaction kind of disrupted the upper level flow. The low level circulation is very disrupted, and also due to a high amount of vertical wind shear here. See this about 30 upwards of 40 knots out here towards the west? Well, that's really knocking off a lot of these cloud tops, and as we all know, these tropical systems are actually warm core lows. They like to be vertically stacked, and once you start getting that wind blow on it, it's kind of like blowing out a candle. Firstly the light starts to knock over towards the side, and then you see that candle kind of blow out, and that is what's happening here with this tropical system for the time being. But as it moves off here towards the west, it should start to go in a little bit more favorable conditions for development as the wind shear begins to decrease, and also possibly allowing it to go back up to tropical storm intensity. But this is looking at the microwave imagery for the past 24 hours, noting that abundant amount of precipitation is encountered all across Visayas here, and you notice it here in the red. That's those higher areas convection, and those where those heaviest amounts of precipitation were located. Actually, here on Samar, you see some of these areas in red as it moved across, but also all these other bandings starting to form up in the last several hours here across southern Luzon and actually entering towards the Metro Manila area there near the end as well. So you still could be seeing those localized flooding up there around the Metro Manila area, especially in the urban areas with those poor drainage, and also in some of the mountains towards the south here you could see the potential for landslides, and actually saw some reports of landslides out there towards the south as well due to the heavy amount of precipitation encountering on a lot of those steeper slopes out there. So that could cause some more damage, and actually upwards of 5 people now reported dead from this storm. So really a sad situation out there right now, and also a lot of reports of flooding damaging many people's homes. So we continue to see the damage come in from this system, and still not out of the woods just yet, as a lot of this convection continues to persist across Luzon. But good news is that we continue to see the storm track away from the Philippines, and actually by tomorrow afternoon and the evening, most of the convection should have already passed the area as high pressure starts to set back in. But with that high pressure, actually the storm is following along the southern periphery of this ridge up here towards the north. You see all this area in here in blue. Well, that's that negative vorticity, and that's going to suppress any development here from the outer rain bands. So northern Luzon actually should remain dry because of this high, but also is going to keep it down towards the south as this low tracks off towards the northwest, basically following the overall background flow. It really just wants to follow with these trade winds as indicated here on these arrows, and it's going to point out here towards the north and northwest actually, and following also towards this trough of low pressure, and that is really going to take it off here towards about southern Hanoi, possibly Vietnam here by the weekend here as the storm tracks off in that direction. And I would like to show you actually another look here at the surface analysis produced by the Thailand Meteorological Agency out here as the storm follows that monsoonal trough that it continues to extend across Indochina. We all know that we've been seeing continued flooding out there, but the storm should follow that trough. So good news, it likely will miss Hong Kong here up towards the north. Definitely wouldn't take your eyes off of it just yet. You could see some gradient induced winds actually as the storm passes towards the south, as it starts to interact with the high pressure up here towards the north. That gradient indicated here by the lines could tighten up and kick up some pretty gusty winds across the region, but looks like most of the precip should remain towards the south as the storm tracks off here towards Vietnam, and could possibly cause some more problems out there actually toward Vietnam and as they have been seeing a lot of tropical activity in the last several weeks, not to mention those monsoonal rains that have been plaguing much of the region. But this is looking at the model consensus, just noting here GFS in red, they're the farthest towards the south. You have basically no gaps up here, following about what JTWC is saying, and a few of the outliers heading up here towards Hanai. But altogether, though, all these models are really in agreement as the storm tracks off towards the northwest. It's going to start to encounter that high pressure towards the north and really kind of turn it towards the west, making a landfall around Vietnam here. With that, here's a look at JTWC's forecast. They do expect it to intensify up to a weak tropical storm, maxing out about 45, gusting up to 55 knots out here in the middle of the South China Sea before it begins to gradually weaken as it turns towards the west, because that interaction with the high to the north is going to start to increase the vertical wind shear as well. After the storm starts to intensify, should see a decrease in intensity before it moves off here. But anybody in Hue and Hanoi should closely watch this storm, as it is still going to be bringing a high amount of rainfall out there. And as we already know, we've seen these previous tropical systems this year seem to all bullseye here towards much of the Indochina region, and not to mention the monsoonal rains have been kind of plugging the area. And also, as we look far to the north, you see some of these westerly lows tracking across Korea and over towards Japan. Well, these are going to bring in some actually precipitation by Friday evening into Saturday across much of Japan and the Honshu region, so you can be expecting to see basically a wet weekend out in that region. But for the time being, they'll continue to watch Tropical Depression Banyan here as it moves away from the Philippines. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please post them in the comment box below. And as always as well, please be safe out there, everybody. I hope you have a great evening.